What's up guys, FLOWSHIZZLE here, and this is your updated Astra guide to being an Astra main. Now some of you guys may know I already created an Astra guide before, but this was prior to the insane Astra nerfs that kind of came out. The abilities Astra has are pretty much the same, with the changing of cooldowns as well as timers, and most importantly the number of stars that she has. And with all of these changes requires a change in playstyles. And with my old guide, while a lot of it still is relevant, there are a lot of changes you're going to want to add on or remove due to the fact that her abilities have now been altered. Now this is going to be my most comprehensive guide where I explain everything from my thought process to playstyle. So yes, this video is going to be a little bit long, but I promise you it is worth watching if you want to understand how to play Astra at a super high level. Now for a little bit of backstory for those who don't know you, from the moment Astra came out, I knew she was going to be a heavy hitter in the competitive scene. So therefore I sunk almost all my hours into practicing and mastering the agent. And now I want to pass it on to you. There will be timestamps below in the case that you want to skip to a specific part, but trust me, this video is going to have a lot of knowledge and you can always come back and watch the video again if you ever need a refresher. I'm going to ask you in the beginning just in case you might forget, but if you could like and subscribe, that would mean the world to me, and it honestly helps out the channel more than you know. But without further ado, let's head on to the video. For starters, let's do a recap of the abilities that Astra has. We're going to start with her most signature one, which is the smoke. Now I say most signature, well, one, she gets it for free, and two, because that's probably the reason why you're picking Astra, because she has smokes. Popping one smoke, and if you look at the bottom right, you'll see that the cooldown time is 25 seconds, but the smoke itself does not last as long. I believe it's somewhere around 15 seconds. So basically, when you're looking at your smoke, you want to understand that around the 10-second mark, because 15 minus the 25 seconds is 10, that is when your smoke is going to run out. Now this is super good for chaining up smoke. So what I mean by this is, imagine I'm trying to drop a smoke here and I'm popping it and I am holding the smoke push. Now when is this smoke going to go down? If I pay attention to the bottom right and use my cooldown as a way of checking the timer, this is a really good way of knowing around maybe 13 seconds. Oh, the smoke I know is going to go away soon, so I'm going to pop this, and then you're going to see the original one just faded. This way you can continually have smokes up without any downtime in between. Astra smokes are the largest smokes in the game compared to every other smoke agent as of the creation of this video, so use that as you will. As on most maps it doesn't really matter, where on certain maps where the choke point might be a little bit wider, Astra smokes sometimes do better. The next ability we're going to go over is Gravity Well, and that's the most iconic and for a lot of people the most annoying ability to need to deal with. So obviously for Astra users, this is one of her strongest abilities. Creates a little vortex. If anyone is near, it's going to pull you toward the center where it pops and then eventually causes this vulnerable effect similar to Viper's Molly. Obviously there's no Molly damage, but the vulnerable effect makes you take double damage, and for a lot of guns that's almost an insta-kill. For Vandal, doing 40 damage. 2 shots is what it takes to the body. For Phantom, it's a little bit more, but regardless, it is a very strong way of not only holding people in place, but even once they get out, they are vulnerable and very easy to kill. This is normally comboed the best with throwing it in front of a smoke. That way, when people run through the smoke, they're not expecting the second star, and now they're stuck in the open where it's very easy to punish. As a heads up, it does pull things like drones, Roombas, and a lot of other utility like Sky's Trailblazer and Dog, so you can be using the Gravity Well effect to kind of pull those things. If I ever refer to it as the suck, no sus intended, but yes, it's a much quicker and easier way to say what you want to do, and people pretty much understand right away, so it's good for comms as well. The second to last ability we have is Gravity Well. It's her Q ability, and it kind of has a little cooldown time where when you hit it, it goes up and then slams down, causing a concuss effect similar to Breach's stun. So this is what you would see if you get hit by it, and you're going to notice that you're slowed and you can't shoot very fast. Another thing you're going to want to notice is that even by putting something like Nova Pulse, but what I want you to notice is that Nova Pulse goes through top and bottom. So if I stand here and I concuss, I'm going to be hit even though I'm on top. This is kind of different from the pull or the suck or the Gravity Well in the fact that Gravity Well doesn't work as well. So if I happen to be on the bottom and I pull the top, it does pull me in a little bit, but the part where it explodes and causes the vulnerable effect doesn't really apply. But from the bottom, it does. As you can see, I am getting slightly pulled and I am vulnerable. So it works one way, not necessarily the other. Gravity Well is best used to clear the pesky angles that are really annoying to clear, but also nearly impossible for someone who's out of there to get out. That was kind of a mouthful, but the heavy meaning I have is that they can't necessarily get out of the range of the stun safely, and most of the time they would rather stick through it and gamble on the fact that nobody clears them. So an example is right here, Dice, and sometimes Jenny. Now the reason is we're gonna put some stars back in terms of these positions. And if I were to see a star being placed here, do I really want to swing wide into the open where there are multiple players? Probably not. Best course of action would probably just to be sit here, tuck as close to the generator as possible, and try to survive until it fades and then you can fight. Regardless, is the same thing as this. Yes, they could probably back up into this, but sometimes it can get spotted. And this one is likely the same, because if they don't, then they're kind of just stuck here. They might swing this one. This one's a little more likely to swing, but regardless, understand the position. So like a position like this is much more likely for someone to swing because it's closer, and you probably wouldn't be able to wait out the effects before you're traded by someone who just runs out and checks this corner. But if you're playing Jenny, you're in the farther back, so it's more understandable that you would want to take it out. Understanding player consistencies and why players make these certain decisions makes you just in general a better player. That's why if I stun Jenny, I'm probably not hard focused on Jenny, but if I stun this, I might be focusing, seeing if someone's going to try to swing out past it. The last ability Astra has is her Astra Wall. It costs 7 ult points and basically requires to connect 2 dots, and with that it creates a giant line. This wall goes across the entire map, goes all the way up, so there's no way of looking around it, and it stops bullets from going through, as well as the fact that you can't hear anything that is going on the other side. Now this isn't fully true. You can hear slightly, especially if they're close to the wall. You can hear walking, but if it's anything farther than like the immediate other side of the wall, generally you don't hear anything. Super strong for post plants on the defensive, and on the attacking side it's super good for blocking off large amounts of area that you don't really want to deal with. So one is either you block off this door, even though it seems like a glorified smoke, it does prevent people from spamming through. The next is to block off something like Heaven, which gives a little bit more value as you don't need to worry about this entire chunk, and with one smoke you only have to really worry about the site. Keep in mind, Astra Walls can be a double-edged sword. If you end up blocking your team off from something, it can kind of work out worse for you. The last thing that's not really an ability, but I do want to cover, is her astral form. So this is when you press her ultimate key. You are required to use this to play stars at all. Get used to quickly going into your astral form by pressing your X key or whatever you have bound to your ult, and then placing your abilities as fast as you can. This kind of makes you a more fluid astral player. So astral form, there are a few things I want you to kind of keep in mind. Number one is you don't hear anything. Similar to how Astral Wall works, where you don't hear anything on the other side, when you're in an astral form, you kind of can't hear what's happening in your surroundings. Now this makes you very susceptible to raised Roombas that are thrown and you just can't hear it like coming toward you. You can't hear any nades, any abilities being thrown at you. So in general, this does make you almost very vulnerable as you're just kind of sitting there and you can't see anything. The next is they've made this ring much more closer to what the ability size is, but it's not exact, so keep that in mind. Make sure you give yourself a little bit of leeway. The final kind of ability Astra has, which is kind of her trump card, is the fact that she can recall smokes, and some might call it a fake smoke. The idea is that when you press F on your star that you pulled back, it pops as a smoke and then quickly dissipates, and therefore sometimes people will get caught off not expecting it to be a fake smoke. So in this case, throwing up a smoke like this, popping it, and then holding maybe an angle in the back where you're not revealed to the entire thing, on the sight hits, sometimes when people want to go through a smoke, they'll just run out and they'll have their, let's say, Reina flash, Sky flash, or something like that ready to flash around the corner. But if you pull back the fake smoke, sometimes you can catch them in mid animation when they don't expect that they're in the line of sight of you, because they expect to be hiding in the smoke. Another common one that you can do is the one for Cat on Ascent. This is on a lot of maps where there's a mid or there's a likely place for someone to be opping. If you've smoked it often, or even just want to, you put the star there and you pull it back right off the beginning of the round, and then you just post it up ready for someone who is maybe trying to either get aggro into the smoke or maybe cross to the side. And sometimes you can just catch them and they're kind of screwed once you know they are. For example, they cross the side, you guys put a star here and then pull. This will make it so that you can essentially just catch people off guard, get that one-off thing where they don't really expect it. I'll show a few more tricks later on in the guide. More tips on Astral will be in the later part of the video, so stay tuned, because there's a lot of things and tricks and tips that you can use to improve and make your Astral play a lot more efficient. So we're gonna go over the kind of basics of being an attacker as Astra and being a defender as Astra. The map I'm using is Ascent because with Split being removed out of rotation, Ascent and Bind seem to be currently the most common two maps where you'll see Astra being played. And Ascent is kind of one of those standard maps with 2 bomb sites amid that is very easy to kind of transfer the knowledge from this map to all the other ones. So just by showing it on this map, you can probably transfer a lot of the skills onto others. So now going into it, we only have 4 stars now compared to the previous 5. What this essentially means is that you have to play a lot more loosely with your stars. Before, I recommended having set setups that you would have with smokes and stars behind it, smokes and stars behind it, and therefore you would have 1 extra star that you have the leeway to do with whatever you want. Unfortunately, now you're not really allowed to do this because you don't have enough stars to go through the entire round. If you have 2 on each site, well, that means you're stiff and you're stuck with any utility already placed on the map and without an ability to move it very quickly. With 5, you had that 1 extra where if your teammate needed a mid smoke or something like that, or pull or concuss, and you can act reflexively on what is happening throughout the round. You still want that capability, but with that capability at 4 stars, you now are required to make your setups a little less stringent. Now, I am a hard advocate of throwing just the 2 smoke stars on either site and then keeping 2 for your body. This allows you to play very flexibly and yet still be able to quickly react to whenever you realize something's a rush. Having the 2 smokes up means that at a moment's notice, you're able to smoke off anything. And then once you realize that that needs a smoke, you can also drop the 2nd star behind it once you've confirmed that that star will probably get value. Oh, they're throwing a KO knife, they're flashing B main. Alright, we'll smoke it, we'll immediately drop the 2nd star, and that way I can make sure that this star isn't just useless on an A hit. If they end up being a fake, I still have a 2nd star that I can place toward A. It does require one thing, which is to be fast with your astral form. Like I said, the faster you are, the more fluidly you can kind of react to certain things, and you can drop stars really quickly. Another thing I want to mention in playing Astra is try not to be as stagnant as before, since your utility at locking down sites isn't as good anymore. Kind of requires you to play a little bit more off of info and try to get more for your team. So I recommend getting good at jump peeking. This is just a process of checking corners without risking your life as much as running out. It's just a lot easier to shoot a target that's just strafing in and out than someone who only shows a shoulder and still spots nearly the same amount of information. Playing aggressive on the defensive and backing up as they use utility to kind of flush you out. For example, if you could force them to use a Sova Dart here to try to push you off this angle, that'd be great. And then you just fall off. Now they don't have a Sova Dart for another 45 seconds. You play sight, you're relatively safe from that dart for 45 seconds. The enemy team is now required to play a lot slower. So you'll see how the ripple effect of baiting out utility kind of works later in the round. Now with these 2 being set and you understanding that after the smoke, you're probably going to want to place a pull. And that's just because, like I explained before, it's a really good combo. You're gonna run it through from the attacker's point of view. Hey, this is smoked, I still want to go through this. You run out and then immediately you're stepping on the star. It's immediately a pull. You're now stuck in the middle of this where you can get pulled from pretty much every single angle on the site, and therefore they are the easiest to kill there. This works for both sides. I wouldn't recommend trying to use that Nova Pulse or concussive ability. It's a little bit harder to land, and also it doesn't have as much guaranteed value. Now let me explain kind of the difference between the 2 abilities, and while they're both good for keeping someone grounded, and while Nova Pulse seems like a stronger ability with the fact that they're pretty much dead since they can't shoot very fast and they're really slow, it seems like it's an almost guaranteed kill. While that is true, it's much harder to land. Timing kind of has to be perfect with this, as if they've already run past or they decide to wait out, the fact that it has to charge up in the beginning kind of makes it a downside. The thing is, if you think of the pull as more of a molly, then you'll start seeing the effect. So for example, let's see, I get pulled, right? I can either back out. In that case, you see how the duration is just simply a lot longer than the Nova Pulse, meaning that this acts like a molly for longer. Rather than Nova Pulse, which is instantaneous, the gravity well is a timed event. Now, if you happen to get, let's say I still escape, but I get vulnerable now. Now that's an even longer molly, as these players aren't going to want to push while they have that vulnerable status. So essentially, that is why, in general, Gravity Well is better than Nova Pulse. All right, now let's talk about some flex stars and what you would want to use your 2 extra stars for aggro advantages. Number one, I want to remind you, you can use your stars to take more map control. So for example, one common one would be for tiles or for top mid. These allow you to take map control and maybe coordinate a mid push with your team. And with this, yes, you lose maybe some control over at the A site, but you've now shut down any potential toward mid, which can be even better because mid allows for flanks, allows for rotates faster, and in general shuts down the enemy's ability to flank and split a site. The next one is to use it defensively to help your teammate get out. So sometimes I'll even pre-place stars in areas that I feel like my teammates want to get aggressive in. So for example, right here, my Jett wants to get aggressive top mid. The moment she shoots, I can just pop the star. You can even pull it back sometimes. It depends on her safety. Like if she's already dashed back to mark it, then maybe I'll even just pull back the star. And I think that's a better because then I don't waste the star. The enemy is now worried again that, oh, Jett could repost with the op. She still has the ability since the smoke isn't blocking her line of sight. And now it might even have a better effect. Let's say they're hitting one of your sites where you have stars and they run through the smoke and they run through the grab well, and maybe we trade evenly. But the idea is that they have taken the site and now you're in the process of playing retake. How exactly do you want to play retake? Well, one, you always want to make sure that with 2 stars left or as many stars left, you're going to want to prioritize certain things. In general, you're going to want to prioritize smokes unless there are some sort of line of sight coverage from your team. So that's like something like Jett smokes that she's like dashing in and she's clearing a lot of the angles for you. But if your team doesn't have that, then you usually want to commit utility to holding off angles that you don't want to worry about. So the common one here is B main, and if you're retaking A, then it's A main. And that's because you probably need that to be smoked for a significant amount of time. Players playing in B main become a real nuisance as it's really hard to scale up if you have to keep worrying about the fact that there could be someone behind you. If you have extra stars, then you don't always have to smoke, and you can use one for smoking out the main choke or the main flank angle or one of the mains, and then use the other one for a pull or a concuss, usually pull like I said. But sometimes when you're on cooldown for your pull, then it's worth to not wait and just use a concuss, as it does close enough that the momentum you have is usually probably worth it. The next is if you have wall, you probably want to use it on retake. Now the wall is just such a strong piece of utility that it makes it really hard for attackers to defend the way that they want to. So the best example I have is for A site ascent, and the wall that goes literally just cuts off the site right from this corner all the way over. This wall is super good. You don't have to worry about A main or anything by the door. They can pretty much only be hell or front Jenny or dice. It's like there's very little area, and even so it's relatively easy to clear as your team doesn't have to worry about getting shot from all the way in the back. You clear a site, and even if it's planted here, then you'll just stick it. They can't hear the sound because the Astra Wall, so it's going to be hard for them to kind of, you know, figure out whether you're on the spike. Causes them to make a lot of bad decisions because they have to gamble on whether you're on it or not. And if you're not on it and you're just posted on the wall, you just get a bunch of free kills. And the fact that your teammates are probably, more of them are going to get out alive just to hold the wall is really good. So how you necessarily hold the wall is you're going to throw it like this, and you hold on opposite sides as possible. Now the reason why you don't want to hold in the middle is obviously I don't know if they're going to come behind me. So when you back yourself up into a corner and you hold the extent of the wall, then everyone who pushes through the wall will be in front of you, and you just get an easy mow down as it's really hard for them to kill you. Now yes, I know some people in the comments are going to be like, you can knife through the wall. Yes, you can knife through the wall. I haven't seen it often enough that I really say it matters. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. I'm saying that if you're worried about it, you're probably worried about that 1% chance, the 5% chance, when you really should be worried about the 95% chance of the common scenario happening. If you really want to kind of avoid that, you just step a little bit farther from the wall. Don't be right against it. Just step a little bit further and you should be pretty much the same. The idea is that your body will block anyone trying to run through the wall. So if you're standing here, they'll block it, and the way that vision works is that you still won't see anything. Even though technically my face is through, I don't see anything while I'm in it. And I have to be fully forward. So if you're standing like right here, their body can't move past it, and they're just stuck in it. And if anything, you'll see a gun peeking out, and you might even be able to kill them. But yes, using this for retake is really good. I would recommend trying to use it for retake if possible. Sometimes you can use it on a site hold. You're gonna go into Astra form. So I'm gonna use my key. It's X, right click, left click, left click, and it'll activate. So right click, left click, and then you'll imagine that, and you'll be all set. You can almost think of it as drawing a line. So right click, left click, and then if you really want to do it fast, for example, sometimes this is planted here, and then I'll just throw it like that, which is right click, left click, that tactic that I'm kind of teaching you, and then clicking, and then like almost like feeling like you're dragging to the second point and just clicking really fast. You can get these walls up insanely fast, and sometimes the speed is what matters. Knowing that it's like, hey, my team is running up, and then just throwing something like that, yes, that isn't perfect, right? So the fact that you can get these up really quickly, if my whole goal for this one was to just cut off the door, I don't need it to be precision clicked. As long as it does majority of it, usually it's fine, and it's a pretty hard one to mess up. But something like this, I would probably take an extra second to make sure that I have this and it's not like this, because that essentially shuts down the majority of the helpfulness of the wall. Now that covers most of the defense. Let's go on to the attack. On the attack side, you're allowed to kind of use your stars a little bit more fluidly, because you generally want to take some sort of map control. So in that case, yes, 4 stars still matters, but remember, you'll probably need 2 for the site exec. If you have 3, that's okay, but I think before, where I would prioritize keeping 3 for a site hit, I don't think you have that luxury anymore. Prioritize having 2 at the bare minimum, and 1 if your team is kind of just like not needing it. Otherwise, I will try to like have smokes up to take mid constantly for this, like a cat smoke or a bottom mid smoke. Maybe I'll do 1 and 2, right? And then I'll pull back one of them so that it kind of looks like they're both smokes, but one of them is clearly, well, one of them to me is clearly fake, and therefore I might catch someone off guard. And you can like change it up. Maybe I'll smoke mid one time, pull back the cat one, and that way they are always going to need to stay on their toes. But the site smokes are always pretty simple, and it depends on the site. If you want to kind of check my other Astra guides out, just take what you learned from this one and apply it. Yes, it is 5 stars versus 4 stars, but the play style is going to be the same. So with these being the 2 that you would almost always want for, let's say, B hit, and on most sites it's 2 smokes as well, then if you have the luxury, you're going to want to put a star for a pull that you don't want someone to swing out of. So for me, my most common one is the stairs one, because I think the stairs is the most annoying angle, since with that they could just peek like this, and they can fight you pretty safely getting behind the cover. So having 1 pull stairs makes it much more easy to get out and get onto site. Now I don't usually use 1 for site, because I probably have already used it for stairs or for somewhere closer. If you're going to prioritize using utility for later in the round versus present, it's almost always better to try to keep it for present if possible. So what I mean by this is that I have 2 stars, and I think that's enough leeway for me to set guidelines that I'm not going to use more than 2 stars in the beginning of the round. But as the round develops, you'll find out that like if you don't survive to the end of the round, keeping 2 stars doesn't matter. Remember, winning the round doesn't require perfection in the 2 smokes. I will say that the fake smoke sometimes works really well for trying to get an entry pick. This is when you're not really trying to commit to a site, but you are trying to fake it. So if I threw 1 smoke like this and I pull this one back, I can hold it, see if anyone's like hiding behind the smoke, and that way I might be able to get a pick. Now this is not good if you're actually planning on hitting the site, because then the smoke won't be there, and therefore you have to be posted. But even like you can't be posted for someone that's like playing this off angle, so it kind of screws over your teammate. If you're like alone or with 1 or 2 people and then you guys are spread across the map, yeah, that's great. You fake the star, you see if someone gets a little greedy, and then you get the kill. Do that, not when you're actually trying to hit the site. All right, so let's say you get onto site smoothly. What do you do with your excess stars, or the stars you have in reserve? It's almost always going to be a smoke. On certain occasion, it can be pulls. It really depends on your playstyle and what exactly is going on. So for example, smokes don't do necessarily very well against a lot of players. So if it's like a 2-on-4 or something like that, I recommend not always prioritizing smokes and trying to use yours to try to like pull people and get kills, because in man down situations where you need to get more kills than just your 1-for-1, you want to make sure your utility is now geared for that. Yes, smokes can be good, but I think like throwing a smoke like this might be actually worse, because now they have a lot more angles to jump out of, rather than you having a star right here, and the moment they come down you pull, right, and then you swing, you might get 1 or 2. it's usually a little bit better. It depends on the situation you're in, but that's a kind of guideline that I use when I'm determining whether I want to use pull versus smoke. It's which one works better for the job that I want completed. Now, in terms of playing post plant, remember that your pull can pull them either off site and therefore stop them from defusing, or just pull them away from the spike. In general, you kind of just want to make sure that the star is away from it. So if the plant is here, I'm gonna make sure that it's just like something like this. That way it pulls them out far enough away from the spike. So on the other side where you're trying to stop plant, it doesn't work as well, because as long as they're on the site, it'll make them, they'll still be able to plant. So even if I pull them here, because I'm still on site, it'll still plant. So that one would depend. That would only work if they're playing like here, where you can clearly see the line of the plant being here. If I pulled them off the site, then they wouldn't be able to plant anymore. As for the Astral Wall on post plant, it's just in general super strong. You can throw it as simple as just throwing a wall as if you wanted to smoke. This makes it, you know, very easy for someone just to be posted up here, or posted up like this, or posted up like this, where they can just kill whoever runs through. And it's just essentially a better smoke because the defenders can't hear anything when running through. So like you could literally be running on site to reposition, you don't have to walk, and if they run through, they would be just as surprised to where you were. Now this combo that I have is probably really hard to accomplish now, especially with 4 stars, but it works, and I call it the Exodia PostPlant, which is the idea is that after you have spike down, and this is usually in like a 1v1 situation, if you have a lot of stars, you'll place 3. Now obviously with the entire video before saying it's hard to get away with this does sometimes happen. This happens usually when like both teams are hyper aggro in the beginning of the round. They clash right away and just kills start going left and right. A ton of players are dead within the first 15-20 seconds. You have a ton of stars because there was no point in using your stars when they're just rushing you, and therefore you can kind of get down to this. Now the idea is that you play somewhere off site and you wait for the tap, and we're assuming that it's planted right here in between the 3 stars. So you're gonna go pull, concuss, and then you're gonna pull back your star. So for me, with those keybinds, it's C, Q, and then F to pull back the star. Pull, concuss, pull back the star. And then you're gonna notice by the time everything happens, you are so dead. So we're gonna pretend that I'm defusing, right? I go and tap, pull, concuss, pull back. And you're gonna notice that I see absolutely nothing up until the point the fake smoke drops. I'm pulled, therefore I can't escape the concuss, so I'm fragile, as well as stuck, as well as slowed, as well as I shoot slower, as well as the fact that when the smoke goes up, I have no idea which direction is from which. And that means when the smoke immediately drops, they're kind of dead. There's nothing they can really do. You can kind of get away with just like a cheaper one. This is probably good enough, but sometimes, you know, everyone always has that feeling where when you stun someone, for some reason their first bullet accuracy is 100% and they just immediately headshot you. It's Exodia, it is excessive. You can do you can do just 2 stun and concuss, and that's probably fine. Now this is an Astral form tip. So like I said before, Astral form makes you very vulnerable in what you can do. You can't move, you can't hear, you can't see, and you don't have your gun out. You're essentially isolated for everything that's going on in the battle. So how to kind of make it a little bit better is I want you to kind of understand that Astral form actually carries momentum. So you are not actually still, you can actually be mid jump. So obviously I'm gonna kind of show you, let's see, I'm gonna show you from here. So I'm gonna jump around here. If Astral form canceled your speed immediately, then when I press it, I should end up here. But as you're gonna see, when I jump and I pop into Astral form, I land over here. So my body is still moving as I am going into Astral form. Now this allows you for your play to be a lot more fluid. So what I mean by this is, let's say we're taking mid, right? So right off the beginning, I smoke, I pull, and then I get close here and I jump, and then you're gonna see how my body landed here, and now I can immediately go to smoke certain things. This allows me to play kind of like almost like battle Astra, where I'm not like, oh, running here, okay, well then I go in and then do it. And I can kind of just immediately go into it and do whatever I need to do, and allows me to be much more effective in a short amount of time. This allows me to get around corners really quickly and immediately kind of set up for smokes. For example, like I said before, what if I was doing a B split and I wanted to smoke these out? Then I smoke it and then smoke it, and then for example it's like, oh wait, there's someone stairs, all right, I'm gonna jump, gravity well, pull, and then you see how my momentum barely stops there, rather than Oh, there's someone here. Then I'll like do this and then pull it like that. Using this jump mechanic kind of just gets you that extra little bit of movement that doesn't slow you down. Momentum is huge in Valorant, and if your 3 teammates are going up or 2 teammates are going up and you're supposed to be following them, it kind of sucks that you have to slow down so hard to kind of catch up with them. And if you can kind of just jump and do it, then you're pretty much like, you negate that leeway. The next thing I want to point out in Astral Form is you can activate your abilities from Astral Form. Don't have to go out and then like activate it as you need. You can do that if you don't want to activate it yet. So for example, I have all my stars in position, but I don't see a necessity of like popping it yet because I'm not anywhere to use it. So I want to smoke this one, pull. I'm gonna use this as a fake smoke to get out, and then you're gonna see that works better in the case that I get out of Astral Form and activate. But on site execs, so let's say like a super heavy site exec where I'm gonna use all 4 of my stars. I have my 2 stars posted here and here. So smoke, pull, concuss, and then I get out. That just works better because obviously I'm hitting them all consecutively and right as the stars appear. So 1, 2, 3, 4, smoke, pull, concuss. So that's the least amount of time for them to react to the amount of stars going down and immediately being activated. Next thing is use your Astral Form to see where your teammates are. You can kind of see them moving, and therefore you know when you need to activate your abilities. Sometimes this works better than the mini map. You'll see, because you can see more detailed, like, oh, this guy's turning in to check this corner. And you can kind of time it with when the smokes are coming up with when they're about to peek. And you don't do it too early, because sometimes smoking too early makes the enemy know that, oh, they're just gonna molly this right away. So if you smoke at the last second right before your teammates are about to peek, they can beat the molly and they can just win the gunfight. Next is there are some spots where you need to fly to a certain location to be able to place a star properly. So on Ascent, for example, Hell, I have to fly under, and I can't just try to place it from the top. I have to fly under to drop it for Hell, and I have to put it on top if I want it for Heaven. Obviously most stars work from just being like above and looking down, but there are issues like that. The next one is like the one way here. This is kind of hard to place it horizontally, and because it's just a lot less to click on. So what sometimes I'll do is I'll just fly up, and that makes it easier for me to spot the verticality that I'm placing it on. One more tip on Astral Form. The easiest way to get out is actually just pressing 1. So if I want to get out and I want my gun out, then I'm pressing 1 right away. But if, let's say, I go into Astral Form and I want to run with my knife, then I'll press 3. It'll force me out of Astral Form into the weapon that I want. So now this is the segment where we talk about random tips and tricks that I have used to kind of improve my gameplay. So number 1 is pulling utility. Sometimes a pull is worth it if you don't want utility to spot you. Now, obviously, you would be like, I'd rather use the pull on players than using on a Sova drone or a Skydog. But sometimes that isn't true. So what I mean by that is you're stuck in a place that is no bueno if you get spotted. So let's say I'm playing logs. If I hear a Sova drone coming out and I have no way of getting out, or if I break it, yeah, but I might get tagged, then I'll get spammed through my own smoke, and I don't have a teammate nearby to break it, I'm pulling just for that drone. I'm gonna pull so that it'll help stall out the timer. Then all of a sudden the drone is useless, doesn't clear anything out, and therefore now my position hasn't been compromised. So those are a lot of good reasons why you would want to pull versus pulling the enemy. If I was in a safer position, like let's say here, yeah, I can break it and I can run to safety without worrying about dying. That way I can keep using my star for the pull on the players. But there are times when you don't have the luxury, pull the utility. It can make a lot of difference. The next is swinging with smoke. Sometimes when you're playing close angles like this, you can re-aggress with the fact that you have a smoke there. This is a very aggressive thing to do, but it feels really good when you get it right. So you'll like initially go for a peek, and then you'll pull back the star, you'll walk back into your smoke, and then they won't expect you to be this wide out. So what I'm kind of just show you there is they'll see you 1 second, then they'll see the smoke go up, they'll assume that you're running and they're going to clear you, and then you're all the way out here, and you can just get multiple kills like this. People don't really expect it, they think it's a real smoke, and you might just get that free kill, maybe get a double kill, triple kill, whatever it is. Next is because Astra has the easiest way for setting up for smokes and having them ready at a moment's notice, you can combo with Sova hella hard, or any sort of like wall banging sightseeing, so fade now. So what I'll do is I'll place the smoke here, and I'll have Sova sit somewhere here ready to dart this window. If I hear footsteps, I'll immediately pop it, they'll immediately dart this, I'll walk into my smoke, and now I can see them. This is a little bit harder to do on Brimstone and Omen because you have to like, I wouldn't want to get into Astral form to do this, but because I can do this ahead of time, now I'm perfectly set up in the case that it ever happened. A lot of playing Astral well is setting yourself up for kind of opportunities that might arise. They might not happen every single time, but there might be a round or two when they rush B and that setup just wins the round outright because they don't expect it, and I'm able to always be prepared for that. If it doesn't work, I'll just pull back the star, use it later in the round. One of the memey things you can do with Astra is put a star and use it to head glitch. So what I mean by this is if I throw a star here, right? It's kind of hard for them to see you. And yes, it also is kind of hard for you to see them. But there are times where it's just like the way you're standing, it just catches them off guard. Now you can get creative with this. I don't really recommend it and I don't do it very often. It's just one of those things where we're up like 12-1. I'm like, I'm just going to try something. This is what I do and it's funny as hell. Another tip is setting up your util for specific spots. What I mean by this is commonly jet dashes. So like jet dashes boat really often, right? So in that case, I want to kill this jet boat. But how do I do this without dying? I might throw a smoke here or I might put a pole here. One or the other. So that when they come out, jet dashes out, I can pull her and then I can get this easy kill and I can smoke and play around this smoke now. This gives me a little bit more leeway in what I want to do. And this allows you to kind of just prepare for a scenario that you set up in your mind. You don't always have to play standard with the smoke and the pull, but obviously that is something that you get used to and therefore you get good at playing it. Setting up the chessboard like you want it and playing around how you envision it is what makes you a better Astra player. Next, in terms of Astra ult, try to see if you can mix in a few highly beneficial ults. So what I mean by this is they kind of serve two purposes. Right here, if I ult from here and I aim toward, you see CT by B right here, you're gonna notice I now have covered basically A and B and this kind of mid area. Yes, they could be tucked here, but obviously generally people won't be like this. You could easily split into a B hit, even though it looks from the A side like an A hit, right? If you want, you can combo this with a smoke door and then plus the wall. It looks pretty selling for a hit, or you could do it vice versa for a B hit and it does basically the same thing. So with that being said, you can kind of use that, work around the fact that it covers the entire map and get it to be dual purpose. Let's also talk a little bit on the maps you should be picking Astra on and the maps you shouldn't really. The maps that I don't really like Astra on are Breeze and Icebox. I find that it's nearly impossible to get any value out of her pull and stun, and her smokes don't do nearly as much. It's not that her smokes are bad, because obviously they're the largest ones. It's just that you don't get very many, which forces you to play a very strict playstyle without any flexibility on which site you want to go if the initial hit doesn't work. Don't play them on those maps. Maybe there will come a meta where it does work, but it also requires your team to know how to play around them. So sometimes that's why it's better to play other smoke agents. In the case that you want to see guides on other smoke agents, I have already covered a crap ton of controller guides. Pretty much I have all of my Viper ones, Omen ones, Brimstone, and Astra that you are all able to take a look at. They're all just as comprehensive as this one, so check them out if you want to get better at every controller, because I want to be your controller main. Anyway, that kind of wraps up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found it helpful. Comment down below if you want me to cover anything else. There will be more guides on the way, but let me know what guides you want to see first. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe. I do have a challenge account that I'm doing where I play random agents all the way until I get to Radiant. So if you want to check that out, I'll have it somewhere here. And also, if you just want to come hang out with me on stream, I stream live on Twitch 5 days a week, every single weekend from 4 p.m. EST or noon to 4:30, depending on the days I work. Anyways, drop a follow and you can just keep updated with me there. Much love. See you in the next one. Peace out.